The first time I saw the new CTO, Julian Reed, he was strutting down the hallway like he'd personally invented electricity. Aviators indoors, loud blazer, Silicon Valley's answer to a frat bro in a Patagonia vest. He didn't even say hello when he passed my desk, just stopped, glanced at my screen, and said, "Nice terminal. You still using Vim? That's adorable." I didn't blink. I've been writing back-end infrastructure longer than some of these VC kids have been alive. And yeah, I use Vim. Not because I'm stuck in the past, but because it does exactly what I need it to. Fast, efficient, no fluff. Like my code. Let me back up. I'm Elliot Tran. Yes, it's a woman's name too. Growing up in the Midwest with Vietnamese parents and a boy's name taught me to fight for space early. I don't shout. I don't grandstand. But my pull requests never break staging, and I've maintained a private GitHub repo for over 10 years. I don't advertise it, but ask around quietly, and most folks in the OSS backend community know my handle. When I joined Prexa Labs, I made it clear to the founders I'd be bringing in modular pieces of my own framework, the reusable stuff, non-exclusive, licensed for internal use, same as I've done in 3 startups before this. They agreed in writing. It was all clean. Prexa was young but sharp. No bloat, no pretense. The founders were technical and gave me space to work. Our team was tight. 7 engineers, 2 product leads, 1 brilliant UX dev named Morgan, who brought donuts every Friday and could map an entire API structure on a whiteboard with 4 colored markers and 1 eye closed. So I contributed. Not just hours, but trust. I opened parts of my codebase and licensed it permissively under MIT, just enough for internal tooling. My login pipeline, rate-limiting middleware, and a logging wrapper that simplified microservice observability. Things I'd built for years, refactored, stress-tested in staging clusters across 4 different companies. My name sat at the top of every file, publicly acknowledged. No confusion. It wasn't ego. It was boundary. But if you're enjoying this kind of story, the slow burn, real-world drama behind the code, go ahead and hit subscribe and like the video. 97% of listeners never do, but it really helps the team keep these stories coming. Appreciate you. Back to it. Things hummed. We weren't unicorn hunting yet, but we had a clear roadmap and a working prototype with actual traction. I'd even stayed late one night to help Morgan debug an edge case in our OAuth refresh that only triggered under specific expired token chains. We solved it over cold takeout and a shared love of Danny Elfman scores. That's the kind of team it was. Then came the pivot. The investors, big names out of Boston and San Francisco, wanted flash, vertical integration, hypergrowth. Julian was the answer, hand-delivered by the lead investor during an all-hands. "This is Julian Reed, our new CTO. He's here to scale us to the next level." Julian walked in like he already owned the building, dropped his backpack, opened a new Slack channel called IP Sync, and wrote, "Everyone, by EOD, link your GitHub accounts here for security and visibility. Full access only. It's policy now." I thought it was a joke. I really did. I even dropped a emoji on the message. He replied directly, "Not optional." Later that afternoon, he called a meeting in the main conference room, walked to the whiteboard like some tech messiah, and drew a giant funnel diagram labeled Asset Consolidation. Under it, no more silos, one repo to rule them all. Someone, I think it was Jamal from Front End, asked about personal IP. Julian smiled like a crocodile with a law degree. "Look, if you wrote it while on our time, using our machines, it's ours. That's industry standard. Let's not overthink it." I raised my hand. He didn't even let me finish. "Elliot, right? You're the back-end lead. You've already uploaded modules from your GitHub. We'll just pull the rest. The company can't operate with split ownership models. We need cohesion." I stared at him. "You're saying everything in my personal repo is company property now?" He grinned. "Wasn't that always the plan?" "No, it wasn't. I'd shared parts, under license. He knew that. Or should have, if he'd bothered to look. But Julian didn't care about contracts or ethics. He cared about consolidation, launch velocity, and the illusion of control. And I realized then, this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a siege, and I was already inside the gates. Julian started every meeting like a podcast no one asked for. No slides, just buzzwords and big arms. "I'm here to unify, to 10x velocity. You folks? You're talented, but we've got fragmentation, rogue modules, partial forks. That ends today. Morgan gave me a side glance. I kept my face neutral, but my fingers curled slightly around my pen. First order of business, Julian went on, pacing like a TED talker off his meds. Everyone connects their GitHub to the company umbrella. All of it. We need central access, central audits. Visibility drives velocity. I raised my hand. Yeah, Elliot? Define all of it. He smirked, like a school principal catching you passing notes. All of it. Full visibility, read, write. My GitHub contains 10 years of personal projects, I said, calm, precise. Only a small subset was licensed to Prexa under MIT terms. Nothing else was ever granted, nor should it be. Julian waved a hand like he was dismissing a fruit fly. We're not going to get into semantics. If it's code you used here, even touched while working here, it's company IP. That's just how this works now. No, I said, before I could even think. That's how lawsuits work. The room got quiet. You could hear Jamal's stylus tap against his iPad like a metronome. Julian just chuckled. You're thinking like a contractor. I need you thinking like a stakeholder. I wanted to say, you need to read the license agreement you clearly ignored, but instead I said nothing. Not yet. After the meeting, I pulled up the shared Slack channel, Us Infra Refactor, where we'd logged all prior decisions. There it was. A message I posted 8 months ago, explicitly stating which modules were brought from my personal repo, which were licensed, and where the licensing files lived. Reactions, approvals, even a time-stamped green light from our former tech lead, Gabe. I took screenshots, backed up the repo, air-gapped the license docs. Every move Julian made confirmed what I suspected. He wasn't technical. He was an operator, a corporate shark in a GitHub hoodie. Over the next few days, I watched the team's mood shift. Jamal started using passive voice in his code reviews. Morgan stopped pushing updates during the day, only late at night. We were all bracing for something, but Julian's momentum didn't slow. He fired our DevOps contractor and replaced them with a growth-focused infra lead from his last failed startup. Renamed folders, killed side branches. Started referring to our internal tools as assets. He also started forwarding things to legal. Subtle, but visible if you watched commit comments and Jira logs. My name started disappearing from references. Licensing notes started vanishing from documentation. I confronted our PM Tanya about it. She whispered, he says anything tagged as legacy can be reclassified. Reclassified, like code had no lineage, no authorship, no history. Then came the email. Direct from Julian. Subject. Repo alignment, immediate action. Required body, Elliot. Per company policy, please link your GitHub account to the Prexa master org by 5 p.m. today. Failure to comply may result in access restrictions, access to my own infrastructure, my own builds, the thing I'd spent a decade shaping line by line, night by night. He was threatening to cut me out of it unless I gave him the keys. I didn't respond. I just started mapping what I'd given, what they'd touched, what they'd copied without notice, and most importantly, what I'd never authorized. Because if Julian wanted a war of ownership, he'd better learn something fast. Code remembers everything. The moment it all cracked wasn't some high-stakes showdown in a boardroom. It was a Tuesday stand-up where Julian turned the room into a firing squad. Big news, he said, clapping his hands once like he was launching a product. We're green-lighting Vantaflow as the foundation for the new app backend. Silence. I looked up from my notes. Vantaflow is mine. Julian nodded, grinning like that was the punchline. Exactly. Your architecture is clean, modular, already battle-tested. Why reinvent the wheel? We're going to fork it, drop it into the pipeline, and get moving. I glanced across the table. Morgan was frozen mid-sip. Jamal looked down. I didn't license Vantaflow for production use, I said. That repo was public, yes, but under a restricted MIT with a non-commercial rider. Prexa was granted access to 3 modules for internal dev only. That's in writing. Julian turned to Theo, one of our junior devs, a sweet kid barely a year out of boot camp. Theo, he said, you got access to that repo? Theo looked at me, then at Julian. Yeah, but Great. Just fork it and pipe it into the new stack. Get it into CI by EOD. I stood up. My chair didn't even squeak. Julian, I'm formally objecting. That repo is not authorized for commercial deployment. This isn't a matter of policy, it's a matter of IP law. He didn't even look at me, just started scribbling something on the whiteboard, a flow diagram, probably nonsense. Look, he said after a beat, you uploaded that code from your work laptop. You discussed it in company Slack. You demoed parts of it in an all-hands last fall. That makes it ours. You shared it in a work context. You used our time, our equipment, our bandwidth. So if I bring lunch in Tupperware, I said, voice low, and you eat it out of the office fridge, it's yours too? He turned around. Don't be dramatic. Don't be a thief. Morgan flinched. Jamal's stylus snapped in half. Julian set down the marker. You want to make this a thing? Fine. But make no mistake, this is happening. The new product launches in 6 weeks. We're on a schedule. If you want to keep contributing, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll proceed without you. It wasn't a threat. It was a line drawn in dry erase ink. Afterward, I sat at my desk, heart thudding, not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't about misunderstanding anymore. He wasn't confused. He wasn't overlooking something. He was staking a claim. That night, I logged in from home, not the work laptop, my personal machine. I backed up every repo snapshot, every license file, every original commit log with hashed timestamps. I created an immutable ledger of everything that was mine and everything I'd given, willingly and with limitations. I also checked the fork Theo had made. He'd already cloned Vantaflow, with my name at the top of every file. I stared at those lines, not out of nostalgia, but recognition. Every semicolon, every clever memory call, every line refactored during a sleepless week in 18 while my mom was in the hospital. I remembered all of it. They could fork it. They could build on it, but they couldn't unwrite the truth. And now I knew. This wouldn't end with a Slack message or a quiet conversation. This was going to take precision, and something far more powerful than a pull request. It would take a withdrawal, one that couldn't be undone. I didn't sleep the night I saw my own work being cannibalized in real time. Just watched the fork logs like a ghost at the edge of a campfire, seeing the sparks, knowing they were about to ignite something stupid. They weren't even subtle. Theo had already committed the full back-end schema untouched with a new folder called Prexacore. My comments were still there. My structure, my sequence generators, like slapping a fresh coat of paint on a stolen car and driving it past the owner's house. By morning, I had a plan. Quiet, legal, precise. Step 1 was decoupling. I opened the Vantaflow repo and started removing anything that had ever been licensed, even permissively. If I'd shared it with Prexa, I pulled it out. The rest, I began to rewrite, function by function, commit by commit, not just a rename, a restructure. Some of it was painful. Optimizations I'd labored over, tested under every edge case, gone. I built new equivalents, better ones. If Julian wanted a fight, he wasn't getting a sword. He was getting smoke. Step 2, move. I created a new handle, completely unconnected to my main GitHub. Fresh alias, 2-factor auth. Air-gapped backups. The new repo was private at first, then mirrored to a clean public page under a different project name. No reference to Prexa, just a changelog with bulletproof timestamps and fresh commit hashes. Step 3, law. I rewrote the license under a custom variant, non-commercial use only, no derivatives, explicitly voiding prior permissions. MIT, gone, replaced with something far less polite. I noted the date of license withdrawal and attached it to the repo's readme in bold. As of date, all prior permissions for external use of this codebase are revoked. Any commercial deployment, fork, or derivative will be subject to immediate legal action. Then I registered it. Not just an upload to some forgotten copyright office database. I did it right. Submitted the package, the full diffs, the license file, and the log lineage, filed under my legal name. Step 4, safeguards. I knew Julian wouldn't stop. He'd greenlight the launch with my framework buried deep in the stack and pretend it was all theirs. So I set up tripwires, DMCA triggers, automated. I used developer tools on the App Store platforms to pre-register a copyright fingerprint tied to the repo's architecture and runtime behavior. It was surgical. Any app that mirrored the specific core functions, API structure, backend naming conventions, memory block signatures would flag against the system. And when it did, the takedown wouldn't come from me directly. It would come from the system. Step 5. Documentation. I printed everything. Hard copies, screenshots, timestamps, a notarized record of the license change and the original agreement with Prexa, emails, Slack exports, even Julian's smug little message saying, "If you wrote it while working here, it's ours now." I didn't need to argue. I needed to be undeniable. Then I did one last thing. I logged into our internal repo, still had access for now, and posted a single note on my old commit thread. Licensing has changed. Refer to the new repository for updated terms. Prior permissions revoked effective immediately. No anger, no threats. Just a line in the sand, one they wouldn't notice until they'd already crossed it. By the end of the week, Julian's team had integrated 83% of my original stack. And I had turned every single function into a tripwire. I didn't need to stop them. I just had to let them keep going. It dropped at 9:02 a.m. on a Thursday. Prexa Labs' official Twitter posted a looping animation of our flagship app's splash screen. New branding, new tagline, same skeleton underneath. Built for scale, powered by the future. Julian's caption? Proud to unveil our proprietary stack, Prexa Core. From zero to launch in 84 days, this is how you move. I didn't even click the link. I didn't need to. I opened the console, ran a local trace, and hit the API with a sandbox token. The calls came back like ghosts I used to know. Same auth handshake I wrote 4 years ago, same endpoint structure, same custom error formatting. I scrolled deeper. Even the header formatting hadn't changed. They didn't even bother to rename the function that wrapped the token refresh. It was still called Secure Refresh, my last name, buried in their proprietary stack. Controlled rage is a funny thing. It doesn't burn. It calcifies. You don't scream. You just tighten, like a ratchet, one tooth at a time. I didn't need to lash out. I'd already done the work. This was the moment the system took over. I scanned through the front-end calls. API references matched my deprecated V1 schema almost line for line, even the comment markers. Theo hadn't rewritten anything. He'd just copied the structure and slapped a dark mode on top. The irony? They'd actually deployed it decently. It worked. Stable. Fast. Because it wasn't theirs. I kept scrolling through their marketing push. Investors were posting LinkedIn congratulations. TechCrunch ran a short blurb about Prexa's rapidly developed custom infrastructure. Julian did a quick interview with a startup podcast where he said, and I quote, "We built this stack from scratch in-house. No legacy tech, clean sheet, innovation only." Scratch. I laughed out loud. A hollow little sound, like the last breath of someone who thinks they made it to safety, not realizing the tide was still rising behind them. I clicked over to the App Store. 5 stars from early testers. Smooth. Fast onboarding. Finally, something that feels built for users. I checked the back-end logs again. Sure enough, they hadn't stripped out the heartbeat pings I used in staging. Every 20 seconds, it still sent a ghost signal to a deprecated analytics path. My exact memory footprint. Julian's team never found it. They wouldn't. I opened the dashboard I'd configured weeks ago, just a little monitoring layer, watching usage patterns against the fingerprint I'd registered. Everything matched. Too clean, too perfect. They hadn't built anything. They'd launched a monument to theft and called it innovation. But monuments don't last long when the foundation doesn't belong to you. I closed the laptop. No need to check again. The fuse was already burning. And Julian? He was out there smiling for cameras, basking in lights he didn't wire. Let him. Because in about 4 hours, the App Store's automated rights verification system would kick off its next sweep. And when it did, there would be a notice, a short one, with one name on it. The takedown hit just after lunch, 1:17 p.m. iOS first, then Android about 12 minutes later. Both stores delisted the app with identical notices, short and cold. This item has been removed due to a copyright infringement claim. Claimant, Elliot Tran. Basis, unauthorized use of protected code. No call, no warning, just gone. What users saw when they refreshed was silence. For some, the app wouldn't load. For others, a cached version showed the splash screen, then a loop of errors that read, "Unable to reach core service. Retry later." They hit retry, nothing happened. Inside Prexa's office, the panic spread like smoke in a pressurized cabin. Slack exploded. Hajan prod deploy, ajo infra status, has urgent, ha alerts. Then someone screenshotted the App Store message and dropped it in Brass General. Theo posted a single line. Did anyone else just see this? Julian barged into the glass conference room like he was kicking down a door. People scrambled to shut laptops, mute calls. Tanya was mid-sentence on a partner call when he yanked the HDMI cord from the projector and slammed it into his own. He projected the DMCA notice on the main screen. Large, blazing white, bold black letters. "This is sabotage," he shouted, pacing like a caged animal. "This is a targeted attack on the company. We will respond legally. We will get this reversed." Morgan raised a hand, tentative. "Is it true that the core code was licensed?" Julian didn't answer, just breathed through his nose like a kettle about to boil. Someone, Jamal maybe, mumbled, "Where's Elliot?" No one responded. Julian pulled up our employee directory and searched my name. Nothing loaded. He stormed out to the front desk. "Where the hell is Elliot Tran?" he barked. The receptionist blinked. "Her badge deactivated this morning." Julian froze. "She quit?" "No, I mean, it deactivated." He turned and stared through the glass like something might materialize. But my desk was empty, my chair tucked in, my monitor unplugged. Nothing left but a sticky note, "Returned peripherals. Thank you." Back in the meeting room, the legal counsel was dialing furiously, trying to reach Apple's developer team. They hit a cue. "This is priority," she whispered into the phone. "This was our flagship. This was... No, I understand the claim is automated, but the claimant... Can I speak to your supervisor?" Outside, partners were calling in. Our largest client sent a terse email. "We are freezing further integration until IP status is resolved. This includes scheduled rollout." Someone else copied a VC liaison. Subject line, "What's going on at Prexa?" Inside, Julian tried to rally. "This is temporary," he insisted. "It'll be overturned. She can't just revoke something we already used." Then Theo, pale and quiet in the corner, cleared his throat. "She posted a license change. I saw it. She even commented on the commit Julian made, said prior permissions were revoked." Julian spun. "Why didn't you tell me?" Theo swallowed. "I did. You said it didn't matter." Silence. Then the lights flickered, only for a second, a power blip. Someone's laptop restarted with a mechanical sigh. Julian sat down slowly. The room was still, because in that moment, they all realized something. This wasn't sabotage. This was precision. And Elliot Tran? She wasn't just gone. She had left the building wired to remember. They spent most of that night in war rooms. Legal, product, ops, all crammed into the executive floor like passengers on a burning ferry, tossing around theories, emails, access logs, and blame. Julian barked orders, half-shouted about escalation paths and intent to reassert, but every door he opened slammed shut behind him. By midnight, they'd pulled up the internal Git history. Tanya, our PM, quietly traced the commit tree like a detective at a crime scene. There it was, plain as day. Pull request 90843, merged by Theo, approved by Julian. Dated 2 weeks after Elliot had posted the new license terms. The commit comment even included the words, "Ignore warnings, just push through for staging." Julian tried to spin it. She left it public. If she didn't want us using it, why not take it down? The lead counsel, Miriam, didn't even look up from her laptop. "That's not how copyright law works." Julian scoffed. "It's open source." "Was," she replied. "It was permissively licensed." Then she updated it. "The repo clearly states that prior permissions were revoked as of the new license date. You authorized the merge after that, which means what you pulled was protected under the new terms, not the old ones." Julian paced. "Okay, but she was using company hardware. The work was derivative. Hell, she wrote half of it on our clock." Miriam finally looked up. "Do you want to take that argument into court? Because every timestamp she submitted proves otherwise. She's got a decade of commits on that code. She licensed a subset to Prexa. The rest was hers." and still is. Someone in the back muttered, "She even emailed it to us." Everyone turned. It was Leo from DevSecOps. He looked like he hadn't blinked in hours. 3 weeks ago, she sent a formal notice to Julian and legal, said she was revoking all prior licensing and migrating her work out of the company code base. I found it in the archived thread. Julian's face twitched. "I never saw it." Tanya, slowly, "You marked it as spam." Miriam clicked something. The projector refreshed. A full-page PDF lit up the wall, the new license Elliot had filed, watermarked and time-stamped with a registration ID and an embedded cryptographic signature. At the bottom, "All use after the date of this license requires explicit written consent. No exceptions." Julian stared at it. "No big deal," he said. "We'll just remove the code and push a clean build." Miriam tilted her head. "You'd have to rewrite your entire backend. The IP claim is already on file. Releasing a new version with even a trace of the old code triggers the same penalty. You'd have to build from scratch, without touching anything she authored. And right now, your app's entire architecture is built on her foundation." "Then we fight," he said. "You want to sue her?" Miriam asked. "With what standing? You violated license terms, ignored written notice, and published commercial software using unauthorized code. That's a textbook DMCA case. She didn't break anything. You did." He sat down hard, like his knees buckled a little on the way down. There was a long pause. Then Jamal, quiet from the back. "So, what do we do now?" The projector screen still showed Elliot's license, her name, her signature, her timestamp. Julian stared at it like it was a detonator. "We call the board," Miriam said, "and you get ready to explain how we lost our flagship product over a repo you didn't read." No one laughed, because in that moment, everyone understood. This wasn't a glitch. This was the bill coming due. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 7 a.m., but by 6:38 they were already seated, espressos untouched, jaws tight, laptops open to the same headline: Prexa Labs flagship app removed amid IP dispute. The lead investor, Alan Keswick, the one who brought Julian in, was pacing by the windows with his phone pressed to one ear, muttering sharp fragments like unacceptable, exposure, and liability ceiling. At the table, the CEO, Dana Hollis, sat ghost still as legal counsel pulled up the file. "We've reviewed everything," Miriam began. "There's no ambiguity. Elliot Tran filed a formal copyright registration for the backend framework used in the Prexa app. The licensing terms were changed 3 weeks prior to product launch." She clicked. A PDF filled the projector screen. The license, Elliot's name, bold, registered, notarized. Additionally, Miriam continued, she emailed this same license to Julian, tagged the legal inbox, and noted in writing that all prior usage rights were revoked as of the date listed. Dana looked like she'd swallowed her own tongue. "We had written permission, right?" Miriam shook her head. "Only for internal use. That agreement was tied to 3 very specific modules. The app contains at least 12 derived components. That's outside the scope. And the license Julian's team used was 2 versions out of date." Alan stepped forward. "So, let's be crystal clear here. We launched a VC-backed product, national press, multi-million-dollar rollout, on code we no longer had legal rights to deploy?" Miriam didn't flinch. "Correct." "And who was responsible for that decision?" Silence. Everyone looked at Julian. He didn't meet their eyes. Dana cleared her throat. "Julian, did you check the license before you greenlit the deployment?" He shifted in his chair. "The code was public. It was already integrated into staging. We'd been using it for months." "That's not what I asked," Dana said. Julian's voice dropped. "It wasn't flagged as restricted until after we forked it," Miriam interjected. "That's incorrect. The repo shows clear license update dates. Her commit history proves it. There's even a comment thread on the pull request Theo opened. Elliot warned you in writing. You dismissed it." Alan narrowed his eyes. "You ignored a written IP revocation?" Julian's hands curled on the table. "I thought it was a bluff." That was the moment. The air shifted. Alan sat down slowly, the way men do when they're about to say something final. "So, let me get this straight. You gambled, without consulting legal that a senior developer wouldn't follow through on a formal licensing change, then you deployed their private code base as the foundation of our product. And now we're looking down the barrel of a possible injunction, developer trust collapse, and press fallout. Julian didn't respond. Alan turned to Miriam. What did Elliot Tran say when we reached out? Miriam glanced at her tablet. Nothing. She hasn't responded, but her documentation is complete. She kept change logs, legal notices, export confirmations. It's airtight. Where is she now? She left quietly the morning of the launch. Her resignation was submitted with a legal statement attached. I withdraw all personal IP previously shared under permissive terms. Future use without consent will be pursued through appropriate channels. Dana leaned back, her eyes distant. So, she whispered, she planned this. Miriam didn't smile, but there was something knowing in her voice. She documented it, carefully and professionally. Alan closed his laptop. Julian, he said, quiet and deadly, your access ends today. We'll be issuing a statement. You'll refer all press inquiries to legal. From this moment forward, you do not speak on behalf of this company. Julian opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The meeting adjourned at 7:22. Outside, the press embargo lifted. Tech Radar ran the full story. Prexa Labs faces licensing debacle. CTO at center of controversy. Elliot's name was mentioned 6 times. She wasn't in the room, but she didn't need to be. They were all speaking her name anyway. The final board meeting wasn't a war. It was an autopsy. No anger left. Just facts on the table, cold and clinical. Julian sat at the far end of the conference room, flanked by 2 PR handlers who looked like they'd aged a decade in 4 days. His blazer was wrinkled. No one offered him coffee. At the head of the table, Alan Keswick, lead investor and board chair, tapped a single printed document with one finger. It was a screenshot of the App Store takedown notice, the one with Elliot Tran's name on it. He didn't raise his voice. So, whose code is this exactly? Julian opened his mouth, closed it, looked down at the table. His lip twitched, but no words came out. It was Miriam, legal, who answered, calm, flat. It's Elliot Tran's, and if we don't settle immediately, we're looking at open court, damages, and the loss of multiple partners who already requested license clarity. Alan nodded once, then turned to Dinah, the CEO. You know what needs to be done. By noon, the app was officially pulled from all partner integrations. A press release was issued. Prexa Labs has paused deployment of its flagship product following a licensing oversight involving third-party intellectual property. Internally, it was clearer. Julian was reassigned to a non-technical advisory role pending transition review. His Slack access was disabled within the hour. HR called it a restructure. The team called it mercy. In the week that followed, everything slowed. Teams paused sprints. VC meetings were canceled. Partners waited. Analysts speculated. Then, quietly, something else happened. A new app appeared on the App Store. Small firm. No major fanfare, but fast, clean, elegant. Built on a back-end that looked suspiciously familiar. The About page listed a single engineering credit. Architect. Elliot Train, principal developer, proxy line systems. That was the consultancy. Not flashy, just efficient. They weren't trying to disrupt. They were trying to build something right. Prexa's app remained offline. Julian's LinkedIn quietly updated to advisor. And me? I took a walk one afternoon, phone off, breeze warm, coffee in hand. Checked the new app once just to see it breathe. It did. No errors, no takedown, no trace of a stolen stack. Just clean code, fully licensed. Because in the end, the difference between ownership and access? A single license file.